The family conflict had reached a critical boiling point when the mother-in-law demanded the keys to the daughter-in-law's inherited childhood home. The husband took his mother's side, and his frustration escalated into a genuine threat. When he raised his voice and slammed his fist against the wall, the woman didn't flinch. She just scoffed. "Go ahead, be a hero." The collision was inevitable, but at the last second, something happened that turned the entire situation upside down. Maeve sat on the hardwood floor in the middle of her parents' living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes, unable to force herself to tape open another one. 3 months had passed since the funeral, and she still couldn't believe her mom and dad were gone. They were 48 and 52. A senseless pileup on the interstate, black ice, a semi-truck that couldn't brake in time. In one fraction of a second, her entire previous life's Sunday pot roasts, her mom's apple cobblers, and her dad's terrible dad jokes vanished. She ran her palm over the original oak flooring, old and creaky, but so deeply familiar. It was a 2-bedroom condo on the 3rd floor of a pre-war brick walk-up, its large bay windows overlooking the neighborhood park. Her parents had bought it back in the 90s. They had poured every spare dime into it, doing the renovations themselves. Her mom had spent a week just picking out the right shade of beige paint. Her dad spent evenings rewiring the vintage fixtures. Maeve grew up here. Her bedroom, once covered in indie band posters, was down the hall. She had studied for her SATs at that kitchen island. This was where she first brought Harrison to meet her parents. Her mom had liked Harrison back then. "A serious young man," she'd said. "You can tell he's from a good family, well-mannered." Her dad was more reserved, but he gave his quiet nod of approval. They had a modest wedding, maybe 40 people, at a boutique botanical garden venue. Lorraine, Harrison's mother, sat at the head of the table, constantly adjusting Maeve's veil, fixing her posture, and lecturing her on how to properly hold her champagne flute. "Maeve, sweetie, you're part of our family now," she had said, patting her hand. "I'll teach you everything you need to know." Back then, it seemed like care. Now, Maeve realized it was the first dress rehearsal for a carefully orchestrated script. Her phone vibrated. "Harrison, you still there? I can drive over and help with the boxes." Maeve put the phone face down without replying. Harrison offered help every day, but for some reason, he always consulted his mother before making a single decision. "Mom says we should hire professional movers. Mom thinks there's no rush to sort the clothes. Mom advises getting an appraisal first." Lorraine showed an astonishing, obsessive level of interest in everything concerning this condo. Barely a week after the funeral, she was already asking about the probate process. "Maeve, honey, I know how hard this is, but bureaucracy doesn't wait. You need to get the estate transferred before the county taxes become a headache." She would call at 7 a.m. when Maeve was still asleep. She'd drop by unannounced, supposedly to check in, but always steered the conversation toward the real estate. "Is the deed in your name yet? What did the estate lawyer say? What are you planning to do with the property?" Maeve stood up from the floor and walked to the window. The park rustled below. The leaves were already turning gold. October was staking its claim. Down below, moms pushed expensive strollers. Elderly men sat at the picnic tables playing chess. Ordinary life was continuing, completely indifferent to her grief. On the windowsill sat a framed photo, her mom and dad at their cabin upstate, tanned, smiling, holding a bouquet of hydrangeas from last summer. Maeve traced the wooden frame with her finger. "Sorry, Mom, that I'm dragging my feet. I just can't bring myself to pack up your things. It feels like letting you go for good." The lock clicked. Maeve spun around. Harrison stood in the doorway holding a brown paper bag from a local bakery. "I texted that I was coming," he said defensively. "I got us iced lattes and some scones. Figured you've been here all day and probably haven't eaten." "I told you I was fine. And you could have knocked," Maeve reminded him. "I know you have a key, but still." "Oh, come on, I'm not a stranger." Harrison set the bag on the counter and looked around. "All right. How many boxes left? Maybe we really should just hire some guys off TaskRabbit?" Mom says. "What does your mom say this time?" Maeve couldn't hold back the sarcasm. Harrison winced. "Don't start. She just wants to help. She's worried about you." "About me?" Maeve crossed her arms. "Harrison, Your mother calls me every single morning to ask about the title deed. That's not worrying about me. That's worrying about real estate. Harrison pulled the plastic cups of iced coffee from the bag. Inheriting property is a big deal, Maeve. You have to handle the legalities right. Maeve took her cup and took a sip. The espresso was strong, bitter, and sharp, just like this conversation. I already handled it, she said calmly. The probate cleared. The deed was transferred into my name entirely last week. Harrison froze, a piece of blueberry scone halfway to his mouth. Why? Maeve looked him dead in the eye. It's my parents' estate. What does that have to do with you? Are you kidding? Harrison put the scone down and grabbed his phone. We're husband and wife. Everything we have is shared. No, Maeve cut him off sharply. This condo is an inheritance from my parents. Under state law, it is my sole and separate property. Harrison looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. He slowly shook his head. Mom was right. She said you changed after the funeral. Changed? Maeve set her cup down. Or did I just stop being convenient? What are you even talking about? Harrison raised his voice. I came here to support you. And you're throwing a tantrum. You came here to check on the condo, Maeve said exhaustedly. On your mother's orders. Don't fake the empathy. Harrison flushed red. He opened his mouth, closed it, and finally forced out. Okay, fine. Let's say Mom is interested. What's so wrong with that? She wants you to make a smart financial decision. This place is a major asset. Being a landlord is a huge liability, Mom thinks. What exactly does your mother think? Maeve interrupted. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. Well, she was saying that her goddaughter, Sloane, is in a really tough spot right now. The poor girl is renting a tiny studio downtown for $2,000 a month, living in awful conditions. And this place is just sitting empty. We could help family out, just for a year or so, until Sloane gets back on her feet. Family, right. Maeve scoffed, looking out the window. So, the grand plan is already drafted. Move Sloane in. Rent-free, I assume? Maeve, it's family. Harrison took a placating step toward her. Sloane's a great girl, super clean. She'd stay a year, save up some cash. What's the difference to you? The place is empty anyway. The difference is that I was planning to put it on the market for rent. Maeve turned to her husband. $2,500 a month. That would cover our own mortgage entirely. Or did you forget we pay $2,200 every month? I didn't forget. Harrison looked away. But Sloane is essentially family. Mom will be deeply offended if you turn her away. Let her be offended, Maeve said coldly. This is my property, from my parents, and it's my decision. Tell your mother the condo will be leased out. To paying strangers. Harrison clenched his jaw, snatched his phone, and typed furiously. Maeve had no doubt he was texting Lorraine. A minute later, Maeve's phone vibrated in her pocket. It was Lorraine. I'm not answering. Maeve pulled out her phone and swiped to decline. That's incredibly disrespectful, Harrison muttered. My mom wants to talk. About her goddaughter? No thanks. I've heard enough. Maeve walked back to the boxes and started sealing one with packing tape. Harrison, if you aren't going to actually help me pack, you can leave. I'll manage. He stood there for another minute, glaring at her back, then turned on his heel and stormed out, letting the heavy door slam behind him. Maeve exhaled and sank onto the vintage sofa. Her phone was blowing up. Lorraine wasn't giving up. 5 missed calls. 6. 7. Finally, an iMessage popped up. Maeve, I know you're grieving, but you can't be this heartless. Sloane is a sweet girl and she's struggling. Let's meet and talk this over like adults. I'll bake your favorite casserole. Maeve grimaced. Her favorite casserole, as if her consent could be bought with baked ziti. She typed a brief reply. Lorraine, I am putting the condo on the rental market. My decision is final. The reply was instantaneous. Don't rush things, kiddo. We'll talk later. Harrison said you're tired. Get some rest. I'll drop by tomorrow. Drop by uninvited? Naturally, Maeve thought. She locked her phone and looked at her parents' photo. Mom, Dad, What would you say? Her dad would have probably shrugged. Your house, your rules, kid. Her mom would have frowned. Protect what's yours, Maeve. Nobody else will do it for you. She spent another 2 hours sorting. Her mom's dresses went into bags for a local women's shelter. Her dad's vintage tool sets went into a box for her brother. Declan, he'd appreciate them. Books, dishware, little knickknacks, some she kept, some she set aside for donation. By evening, she had 8 packed boxes. She ordered an Uber XL, loaded the things she was keeping, and headed home. Her and Harrison's apartment met her with silence. A standard 1-bedroom in a sprawling suburban complex. A 30-year mortgage, $2,200 a month. Harrison worked as a project manager for a commercial construction firm, making about $80,000 a year. Maeve was a corporate accountant pulling in $60,000. They weren't poor, but they weren't wealthy either. Every month required budgeting, tracking expenses, trying to save. An extra $2,500 a month in rental income would change their lives. Harrison wasn't home. Maeve heated up some leftover soup, ate in silence, and turned on the TV. At 10 p.m., her husband walked in, looking sullen and smelling of stale cigarette smoke. He went straight to the fridge, grabbed a local IPA, and chugged half the can. Were you at your mom's? Maeve asked. I stopped by, Harrison mumbled. She's upset. She says you've changed. Changed, Maeve repeated. Meaning I stopped agreeing to everything? Harrison slammed the beer can on the counter and glared at her. Maeve, why are you so obsessed with this? Mom genuinely wants to help Sloane and us. What do you care who lives in that apartment? I care a lot. Maeve muted the TV. Harrison, let's be totally transparent. Your mother wants to house her pseudo-niece for free. I plan to rent it out for $2,500. That's $30,000 a year. Do you understand the difference? I get it. Harrison finished his beer and crushed the aluminum. But Sloane is practically blood. We could do a good deed. At my expense, Maeve clarified. A good deed financed entirely by me. The property is mine, the rental income would be mine, and I have decided not to throw it away. Harrison stood up and chucked the can into the recycling bin. You know what? Do whatever the hell you want. Mom's right. You've become greedy. Maeve let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Greedy? Because I refuse to hand over $30,000 a year in lost revenue to someone who isn't even my family? Harrison, I've met Sloane maybe 3 times in my life. Why is it my job to subsidize her lifestyle? Because we're a family, Harrison yelled. Because that's what decent people do. Because my mother asked. Your mother, Maeve stood up from the couch, can ask for a pony, but I make the final call. This is my inheritance from my parents, who worked blue-collar jobs their whole lives to pay off that mortgage. I am not handing it over to a stranger. Harrison stood there, breathing heavily, fists clenched. Then he spun around, marched into the bedroom, and slammed the door so hard the drywall shook. Maeve stayed in the kitchen, staring out the window at the distant suburban streetlights. Somewhere downtown, her parents' condo stood dark and empty. Tomorrow, she would call a property management company, list the unit, and start screening applicants. And the day after tomorrow, she knew this with absolute certainty, Lorraine would show up with new arguments, crocodile tears, or subtle threats. Because her mother-in-law never, ever surrendered when she saw a financial advantage for her side of the family. Maeve poured herself a glass of water and sat at the island. A war was coming. She felt it in her bones, and she needed to prepare. Lorraine appeared the very next day at exactly 9 a.m. Maeve was just grabbing her laptop bag to leave for the office when she heard the familiar, aggressive doorbell pattern. 3 short, 1 long. Lorraine's signature. Maeve, sweetheart, open up, came the muffled voice through the door. I brought a hot blueberry crumble, straight from the oven. Maeve froze in the entryway, staring at the deadbolt. She could pretend she had already left. But Lorraine had definitely seen her Honda parked in her assigned spot. Besides, postponing the confrontation was pointless. The woman had a key to their apartment. Harrison had given it to her a year ago under the guise of emergencies. Maeve hadn't fought it then. She regretted it every single day now. She unlocked the door. Lorraine blew into the apartment like a Category 4 hurricane, dressed in a pristine beige trench coat, her bob perfectly blown out, carrying a massive glass Pyrex dish. It genuinely smelled amazing. Butter, sugar, berries. Oh, Maeve, honey, you look dreadful. Lorraine gave her a critical once-over. Bags under your eyes, your face is so gaunt. I knew you weren't taking care of yourself. Look, I baked your favorite. Let's put a pot of coffee on and have a real heart-to-heart. Lorraine, I'm heading to the office. Maeve tried to maintain control of the threshold. Maybe another time? Nonsense. You'll be 30 minutes late. It's not the end of the world. Lorraine was already brushing past her into the kitchen, dropping the Pyrex on the counter. Besides, we have incredibly important matters to discuss. Maeve closed her eyes, slowly counting to 10. Then she followed her into the kitchen. Lorraine was already playing hostess, filling the Keurig, pulling mugs from the upper cabinets. Sit, sit, she waved a manicured hand toward the bar stools. Have some of this crumble while it's hot. Maeve sat down but didn't touch the fork. Lorraine pushed a mug of coffee toward her, cut a massive slice of the dessert, then sat opposite her, folding her hands on the quartz countertop, a gesture Maeve knew intimately. The serious talk posture. Maeve, Lorraine began, her voice dripping with artificial honey. I know how agonizing this is for you. Losing your parents at your age is an unspeakable tragedy. But life moves forward, and we must think about the future. I am thinking about it. Maeve took a sip of the black coffee. Which is exactly why I'm leasing the condo out. And that is exactly what I wanted to discuss. Lorraine leaned in closer. Sweetheart, do you truly want the nightmare of dealing with strangers? Renters are a horrific liability. They trash the hardwood. They stop paying rent. They throw wild parties. My friend Brenda down at the country club rented her townhouse to a young couple. Turned out they were running a meth lab. The DEA raided the place. Brenda had to gut the property to the studs. I'll be running thorough background checks. Maeve set her mug down. I'm using a property manager. Ironclad lease. First, last, and security deposit. Oh, you naive girl. Lorraine clicked her tongue. Contracts are useless paper when you're dealing with deadbeats. And trust me, the world is full of them right now. Now, Sloane is a completely different story. She's from a stellar family. She's my goddaughter. She's meticulous, responsible, and she'd treat the place like a sanctuary. At my expense. Maeve met her mother-in-law's gaze evenly. Lorraine, let's cut the pleasantries. You want me to let Sloane live in a prime real estate unit for $0? I would be losing $2,500 a month. That's $30,000 a year. Do you seriously consider that a fair arrangement? Lorraine's face hardened for a fraction of a second. Then she smiled, a tight, frigid expression. Fairness is relative, Maeve. In a family, we don't nickel and dime each other. You help Sloane today. Tomorrow someone helps you. Who exactly? Maeve leaned forward. You? Harrison? Forgive me, but I don't see either of you offering to compensate me that lost income. Lorraine pursed her lips, stood up, paced the length of the kitchen, and stopped by the window. You know, Maeve, I was desperately hoping to avoid this conversation, she said, her back turned, but I must be blunt. You are behaving with shocking selfishness. Harrison is miserable, I see it. He's trying to keep the peace in this family. And you're alienating him. You're alienating all of us. I'm alienating you? Maeve felt a hot spike of adrenaline. Excuse me, but you are the one trying to hijack my inheritance. Inheritance? Lorraine whipped around. My dear, you are married. You and Harrison share a household, finances, and a life. Everything you possess is a marital asset. That condo is a pillar of your shared family wealth. No, Maeve stated firmly. The condo was inherited. Under state law, an inheritance is considered separate property. Harrison has absolutely zero legal claim to it. Lorraine narrowed her eyes. She walked back to her designer tote bag, pulled out a sleek manila folder, and dropped it in front of Maeve. Well, I consulted with an estate attorney. Read it. Maeve opened the folder. It contained printouts of the state's family code, heavily highlighted with yellow marker. There were margins annotated by a lawyer. The core premise was clear. While inheritances are generally separate property, they can be classified as commingled marital property under specific circumstances. And what is this supposed to prove? Maeve closed the folder. It proves that the law isn't as black and white as you think, sweetie, Lorraine said, enunciating every syllable. My lawyer made it very clear. If you refuse to willingly act in the family's best interest, things could get complicated. Harrison, as your spouse, can easily claim a stake in that equity if he proves he contributed to its upkeep. Paid HOA fees, maybe? Helped with property taxes? Bought supplies to fix a leaky faucet? Maeve let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. Harrison hasn't set foot in that condo since the funeral. Hasn't set foot yet. Lorraine leaned in, her eyes glinting. But he could start. He could go over there, fix a few things, pay the utility bills from your joint checking account, and boom, he has established a financial interest. This is extortion. Maeve stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You are literally trying to blackmail me. I am trying to talk some sense into you. Lorraine stood up to match her. Maeve, be rational. Family is sacred. You cannot worship the almighty dollar over your own flesh and blood. Sloane is desperate. She's working for peanuts, living in a shoebox, struggling like a peasant. You have the power to fix it. Why are you so obstinate? Because Sloane is nothing to me. Maeve grabbed her laptop bag, heading for the front door. And I am not her personal charity. I have my own life. My own financial goals. Your goals? Lorraine chased after her. You mean your greed. Maeve, you are changing, and it is a very ugly look on you. You used to be so sweet, so accommodating. Now you snap and snarl and put yourself above this family. Maeve stopped with her hand on the doorknob and turned. Lorraine, let me be crystal clear so we never have to revisit this. I am leasing the unit at market rate to strangers. Your goddaughter is not crossing that threshold. And tell Harrison not to even dream of trying to legally maneuver his way onto the deed. This is over. She walked out, pulling the door shut behind her. In her car, she gripped the steering wheel, her hands visibly shaking as she started the ignition. The call from Harrison came exactly 5 minutes later. Are you insane? His voice was a vicious hiss. Mom is crying hysterically. She said you verbally abused her and threw her out of her own son's home. I didn't throw her out. Maeve merged onto the avenue, fighting to keep her voice level. I just enforced a boundary. She says you've turned into a sociopath, Harrison yelled. She brought you breakfast, tried to help, and you treated her like garbage. Help? Maeve braked at a red light. Harrison, your mother brought a dossier from a divorce attorney outlining how you could sue me for the rights to my parents' house. Is that your definition of help? Harrison stuttered, caught off guard. Well? She just wanted to show you all the angles. The options. Oh my God. Maeve, you can't be this ruthless. Sloane is really going through it. Then let her get a second job, Maeve snapped. Or better yet, your mom can house her. Lorraine lives in a 4-bedroom McMansion in the suburbs. She's got 3 empty guest rooms. Have Sloane move in there. Mom needs her space. How could she? Harrison caught himself. Exactly. Maeve hit the gas as the light turned green. Your mother has zero desire to sacrifice her own comfort. But she's perfectly happy demanding I sacrifice mine. Harrison, I'm at work. We're done talking. She hung up. She ran purely on adrenaline the rest of the day. She approved invoices, reconciled accounts, answered emails in a blur. Her coworkers could sense the radioactive energy rolling off her and gave her a wide berth. During her lunch break, the property manager called. He had listed the condo, said the price point was perfect, and was scheduling showings for the very next day. Maeve felt a tiny wave of relief. At least the wheels were in motion. She drove home that evening, dreading the inevitable confrontation. But Harrison wasn't there. He'd texted around noon saying he was working late. Maeve heated up a frozen dinner, ate standing at the counter, and opened her laptop to research landlord insurance policies and LLC protections. She needed a fortress around her assets. At 10 p.m., an iMessage popped up from Lorraine. Maeve, I abhor conflict. Let's try again. Calmly. Come over for Sunday brunch. I'll make those mimosas you like. I'll invite Sloane so you can actually get to know her. I know once you see the desperation in the poor girl's eyes, your heart will soften. Maeve swiped left and deleted the text. At 11 p.m., Harrison finally walked in. He looked exhausted, smelling strongly of a dive bar. He walked right past her without making eye contact and collapsed onto the living room sofa, grabbing the TV remote. Maeve closed her laptop and walked over, standing between him and the screen. Harrison, we need to talk. About what? He didn't look away from the ESPN highlights. About how you made my mother cry? Or about how she's ruining your life? Maeve sat on the coffee table facing him. Harrison, this is my property. My decision. Why is it so impossible for you to respect that? Because you're acting like a selfish brat. He finally looked at her, his eyes bloodshot. Sloane is basically family. She's struggling. And all you care about is your bank account. I care about our security. Maeve's voice cracked. $2,500 a month, Harrison. That covers our entire mortgage. We could pay down our debt, put money away for a baby, maybe actually take a vacation. A baby? Harrison scoffed. With your twisted view of what a family is? Maeve, you don't even know what the word means. Family isn't just about taking. It's about giving. It's about sacrifice. Sacrificing for our future is one thing, Maeve stood up. Setting my own future on fire to keep your mother's goddaughter warm is another. If Sloane needs housing, Lorraine can provide it. Harrison threw the remote onto the cushions. You know what? I'm sick of arguing with you. Do whatever the hell you want. But don't expect me to have your back when the fallout hits. He pushed past her, heading into the bedroom, and slammed the door. Maeve stood alone in the glow of the television. Her chest felt tight, like a heavy steel band was ratcheting down around her ribs. Her husband had chosen his mother's side, completely and unconditionally. The next few days passed in a suffocating, icy silence. Harrison avoided her, leaving early and coming home late. Lorraine called incessantly, fluctuating between tearful voicemails and passive-aggressive texts. Maeve ignored all of them. You're destroying this marriage. Harrison isn't sleeping because of the stress you're causing. I'm praying for your soul, Maeve. On Thursday, the property manager hosted the first viewings. Maeve met them at the condo. A young couple arrived: Julian, a software developer, and Harper, a freelance graphic designer. They adored the vintage charm, the original hardwoods, the park view. They met the income requirements easily and wanted to sign immediately. Maeve told the manager to draft the lease for Monday morning. That evening, she told Harrison, I found tenants. We signed the lease on Monday. He looked up from his phone, his face completely blank. Mom is going to lose her mind. It's my asset. Maeve walked to the kitchen to prep dinner. Your asset is nuking our marriage. Harrison followed her. Do you even realize that? You are tearing us apart because you can't just throw my mom a bone. Maeve chopped a bell pepper with aggressive precision. Harrison, in a healthy marriage, the husband stands with his wife, not his mother. She is my mother, he yelled. And she is right. You've become cold, greedy, and unfeeling. Maeve put the chef's knife down and turned slowly. Did I become cold, or did I just stop being a doormat? Before my parents died, your mom called at 7 a.m. on Saturdays, and I politely answered. She rearranged my kitchen cabinets, and I smiled. She critiqued my clothes, my cooking, my career, and I nodded. I was convenient. I was obedient. But the second I dared to protect something that belongs to me, suddenly, I'm a greedy sociopath. You twist everything! Harrison pounded his fist on the granite island. Mom loves you. She cares about us. Your mother wants to control me. Maeve picked the knife back up. Just like she controls you. And you are too blind to even see it. Shut up! He slammed his hand against the cabinets. Do not talk about my mother like that. Or what? Maeve turned to face him, the knife held casually at her side. What are you going to do, Harrison? He stared at her, his chest heaving. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He turned and stormed out of the apartment. A minute later, she heard his car engine rev in the parking lot. Maeve finished making her dinner, ate alone, and texted her older brother, Declan. She laid out the entire situation and asked for advice. Change the locks at the condo immediately, Declan texted back. And gear up for a bloodbath. From what you're telling me, Lorraine isn't going to let this go. Maeve thought about it, then emailed her property manager. She requested that a locksmith be present on Monday morning, right after the lease signing, to swap out the deadbolts. The manager agreed. On Saturday morning, Lorraine showed up again. And this time, she brought props. Maeve opened the door to find her mother-in-law standing next to a girl in her early 20s. The girl was frail-looking, wearing a cheap, oversized jacket, staring at the floor with massive, tear-filled eyes. "Maeve, darling, look who I brought. This is Sloane." Lorraine practically shoved the girl into the entryway. "Sloane, this is Maeve, Harrison's wife, the wonderful woman who holds the keys to your salvation." Sloane gave a pathetic, trembling smile. "Hi. Auntie Lorraine told me about the empty condo. I swear I'm super clean. I won't be a bother, and I'd be so grateful." Maeve looked at Lorraine. The older woman was beaming with a triumphant, sickeningly sweet smile. It was a textbook manipulation tactic. Bring the charity case directly to the door, weaponize guilt, force compliance through sheer social awkwardness. "Sloane," Maeve said, her voice steady and calm. "The condo is already rented. The new tenants are signing the lease on Monday." The girl's face crumbled. Lorraine gasped dramatically. "Rented? You said you were just looking." "I found them." Maeve crossed her arms. "A lovely young couple. They're paying $2,500 a month, plus a 2-month security deposit. A 1-year ironclad lease. But..." "Sloane!" Lorraine grabbed the girl's arm. "She was counting on this. I promised her." "You had absolutely no right to promise her anything," Maeve said, her voice dropping an octave. "Lorraine, I was exceptionally clear. The unit was going on the market. You chose to ignore reality. That is your problem, not mine." Sloane let out a loud sob. "I really thought. Auntie Lorraine said you were generous, that you wanted to help family." "Sloane," Maeve softened her tone slightly for the girl's sake. "I understand the rental market is brutal right now, but I am not a charity. I have a mortgage, student loans, and my own bills. That rental income is money I rely on. But I could pay something." The girl looked up, mascara running. "Not $2,500, obviously. But maybe 800? 1,000? The unit is leased," Maeve repeated flatly. "I'm sorry." Lorraine spun around, pulling the sobbing girl with her. "Come on, Sloane. We clearly aren't welcome here. Some people have a cash register where their heart should be." They left. Maeve locked the door and leaned her forehead against the cool wood. Her hands were shaking violently. The rage inside her was boiling rage at Lorraine's sociopathic manipulations, and rage at Harrison, whose silence had paved the way for all of this. Her phone rang. It was Harrison. "Are you happy now?" He screamed into the receiver. "Mom called me sobbing. Sloane is having a panic attack in the car. You are a cold-blooded monster. Do you realize that? I am protecting my financial future." Maeve kept her voice dangerously quiet. "Harrison, your mother ambushed me with a crying 20-something to try and guilt-trip me into forfeiting my inheritance. It's disgusting." "You're disgusting!" He slammed the phone down. Maeve sank to the floor in the hallway, pulling her knees to her chest. She wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. There was only a hollow void inside her, and the terrifying clarity that her marriage was disintegrating before her very eyes. Her husband was a puppet. Her mother-in-law was a bulldozer. Monday was going to be a war zone. She pulled out her phone and texted Declan. "Can you come with me on Monday to the lease signing? I think Lorraine might try to sabotage it." "I'll be there," her brother replied instantly. "I'm bringing Vance too, just in case. These people sound unhinged." Maeve stood up, went to the bathroom, and splashed freezing water on her face. She looked in the mirror. Pale skin, dark circles, a hardened jawline. Lorraine was right about one thing. She had changed. She was harder now, colder, but she had no choice. That condo was the last tangible piece of her parents, the legacy they had bled for, and she would burn the world down before she let Lorraine steal it. Harrison didn't come home on Sunday. He texted a brief, "Staying at Mom's." Maeve spent the day in absolute silence, prepping her documents, verifying the lease agreement, and coordinating with the property manager. Sunday evening, Lorraine called. Maeve almost declined it, but some morbid curiosity made her answer. Maeve. Lorraine's voice was devoid of its usual fake sweetness. It was pure ice. You are making a catastrophic mistake. A very, very large mistake. Reconsider before it's too late. What exactly are you implying? Maeve's muscles tensed. I'm implying that family is a fragile ecosystem, Lorraine said slowly. And those who poison the well usually end up drinking from it. Harrison is in agony. I will not allow you to destroy my son's life. Are you threatening me? Maeve's heart hammered against her ribs. I am warning you. Lorraine's voice rose. Be smart, Maeve. Call off the renters. Give Harrison the keys to the condo. Let him manage the property. Real estate is a man's game anyway. Let him handle it. Keep the peace. Harrison is never getting those keys. Maeve gripped the phone tightly. And that condo remains entirely in my name. Have a nice night, Lorraine. She hung up, immediately blocked the number, and emailed the property manager to move the meeting to 9 a.m. sharp. She wanted this done before Lorraine had time to launch a daytime offensive. Sleep was impossible. Maeve lay in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator in her empty apartment. The silence from Harrison was louder than any screaming match. Monday morning, she dressed in sharp business casual, drank 2 espressos, and grabbed her leather portfolio. As she walked to her car, she called Declan. Ready? Already on the way? Her brother grunted. Meeting you out front at 8:45. Maeve pulled out of her complex. Today was the day. The day she either secured her parents' legacy or lost everything. The condo, the marriage, her sanity. The property manager, a sharp guy in his 40s named Greg, was waiting by the front steps of the brick walk-up. Julian and Harper were there, holding coffees and chatting excitedly. Declan pulled up a minute later in his Tacoma. He and his buddy Vance, a guy the size of a commercial refrigerator, stepped out and flanked Maeve. Morning, Greg shook Maeve's hand. Lease is printed. Let's head up and get the ink dry. Maeve nodded, scanning the street. No sign of Lorraine's pristine Lexus. Maybe she had backed down? Or maybe she just overslept. They walked up the 3 flights of stairs. Maeve unlocked the door, letting the morning sunlight spill across the empty hardwood floors. The apartment smelled like lemon oil and old wood. Her parents always loved how the morning light hit the living room. Man, this place is incredible. Julian walked toward the bay windows. Harper, look at this view of the park. We're so thrilled you picked us. Harper smiled at Maeve. Greg spread the paperwork out on the kitchen island. All right, standard 12-month lease. $2,500 a month. $5,000 due today, for first and security. Utilities transfer to your names. Look it over. Sign at the bottom of pages 3 and 7. Looks perfect. Julian pulled a pen from his jacket. Bang. The front door, which hadn't been fully latched, flew open and slammed against the drywall. Lorraine stood in the threshold, her hair wild, her face flushed dark crimson. Right behind her was Harrison, looking pale, exhausted, and sick to his stomach. Stop right there. Lorraine marched into the living room. Maeve, end this charade immediately. Greg froze, the paperwork in his hand. Julian and Harper stepped back, eyes wide. Declan and Vance smoothly stepped forward, forming a physical barricade between Lorraine and the kitchen island. Lorraine, Maeve said, her voice eerily calm despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. You are trespassing on private property. Private? Lorraine tried to shove past Declan, who didn't budge an inch. This is a marital asset. Harrison, tell her. Harrison stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the floorboards. Maeve looked at him. Her husband wouldn't even meet her eyes. Harrison has zero legal standing here. Maeve turned to Greg. Ignore them. Please sign. You wouldn't dare! Lorraine lunged around Vance, snatching the lease agreement off the counter and trying to rip it in half. The thick cardstock resisted, and Greg quickly grabbed her wrist, prying the papers away. Hey, lady, back off! Greg yelled. Declan. Maeve nodded. Declan and Vance grabbed Lorraine by the elbows and practically hoisted her off her feet, dragging her toward the door. "Get your hands off me!" she shrieked, kicking wildly. "Harrison! Are you going to let these thugs assault your mother? Do something!" Harrison jolted, taking a half-step forward, but stopped dead when he met Maeve's eyes. "Harrison," Maeve said softly, but the sound cut through the screaming. "If you take one step to defend her right now, you and I are divorced by Friday." He stood there, paralyzed, agonizingly torn between the umbilical cord and his marriage vows. Lorraine thrashed in the doorway. "Harry, my baby, she's humiliating you. She's evicting your own mother. Be a man. Mom, stop." Harrison's voice cracked. He looked at Maeve, then at his mother. "Mom, let's just go." "What?" Lorraine stopped struggling, staring at her son in pure horror. You're siding with this bitch? I just want the screaming to stop." Harrison dragged a hand over his face. "Mom, the deed is in her name. We can't do this here." Lorraine wrenched her arms free from Declan. She walked right up to Harrison and slapped him across the face. The crack echoed in the empty stairwell. "You pathetic coward," she spat, venom lacing every syllable. "A weak, spineless boy. Letting this gold digger walk all over us. I raised you better." Harrison touched his reddened cheek, stumbling back a step. Maeve saw the absolute devastation in his eyes. The humiliation. The broken realization of who his mother truly was. "Enough, Mom." Harrison grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the stairs. "We're leaving." They disappeared down the stairwell. Declan pulled the heavy front door shut and locked the deadbolt, leaning against it. "Jesus Christ," Vance exhaled. "That was wild." Greg smoothed out the slightly crumpled lease. "Well, I've seen some crazy ex-husbands, but that mother-in-law takes the cake. Luckily, I have a backup copy in my briefcase." Julian and Harper looked terrified. "We are so sorry about that," Maeve said, rubbing her temples. "Family drama. I promise. They will never have access to this building. It's okay." Harper gave a weak smile. "Just glad the door locks work." "They're getting changed in 10 minutes, Maeve assured her. Greg pulled out the pristine backup copy. Julian and Harper signed. Julian handed over a certified cashier's check for $5,000. Maeve took it. It was real. The money was secured. Her parents' legacy was safe. The locksmith arrived right on schedule, swapped the cylinders on the deadbolt, and handed Maeve 3 sets of shiny new keys. She gave 2 to the tenants and kept the master. "All right, we're officially done." Greg packed up his briefcase. "I'll handle the move-in inspection with them later today." Everyone walked downstairs. The tenants left to get their U-Haul. Declan and Vance lingered by Maeve's car. "You holding up, kid?" Declan pulled her into a tight hug. "I don't know." Maeve stared at the pavement. "Dec, my marriage is over. I just watched it die up there. If a man can't protect his wife from his own mother, what's the point of being married?" Vance lit a cigarette. "Pardon my French, Maeve, but the guy is a massive wimp. You dodged a bullet. He's married to his mommy." "He's right," Declan nodded. Harrison showed his true colors. "You deserve a partner, not a dependent. Come stay at my place tonight." Maeve nodded. "I have to go pack a bag." She drove back to the suburban apartment. The emotional crash was hitting her. She felt hollowed out, numb. She parked, took the elevator up, and unlocked her door. The apartment smelled of cheap wine. Lorraine and Harrison were sitting at the dining table. Lorraine was nursing a glass of Pinot Grigio, her eyes puffy but furious. Harrison was staring at a half-empty beer bottle. "Ah, the landlady arrives," Lorraine sneered, standing up. "Pleased with yourself?" "Very." Maeve walked past them, throwing her keys on the counter. "Lorraine, what are you doing in my apartment?" "Our apartment," Harrison corrected quietly. "Mom came over to decompress. We all need to talk. I don't recall extending an invitation." Maeve turned to face them. "Harrison, your mother has a key to this unit. I want it back. Now." Excuse me? Lorraine clutched her pearl necklace. Are you insane? I am his mother. I have a right to access my son's home. You have zero rights to my home. Maeve held her hand out. The key. Drop it, Harry. Lorraine looked at her son. Are you listening to how she speaks to me? Harrison stood up, pushing his chair back aggressively. Maeve, drop it. You've gone way too far today. I went too far? Maeve let out a dry, humorless laugh. Your mother ambushed a private business transaction, tried to destroy legal documents, screamed at my tenants, and assaulted you in a hallway. But I'm the one who went too far? She was distressed, Harrison shouted. You don't understand. Sloane is crying in her car right now because she has nowhere to go. Mom feels responsible. Then Mom can clear out a room in her McMansion. Maeve fired back. Harrison, I am done. I am so unbelievably done with the manipulation, the guilt trips, the utter lack of boundaries. Give me the key, or I'm calling a locksmith right now. Lorraine stood up, squaring her shoulders. You know what, Maeve? You're right about one thing. I waste too much energy trying to guide a selfish, ungrateful little girl who doesn't appreciate family. But I won't surrender my son. I will not let you ruin his life. I'm not ruining his life. Maeve took a step closer to the older woman. You are. You refuse to let him grow up. He's 30 years old, and you still dictate his finances, his housing, and his marriage. Shut your mouth, Lorraine barked. Do not lecture me on motherhood. Mom, Maeve, stop. Harrison stepped between them. Just stop fighting, then choose. Maeve stared directly into her husband's eyes. Me or your mother? Right now, Harrison. Make a definitive choice. He froze. His mouth opened, but no words came. Lorraine grabbed his forearm. Harry, tell her. Tell her that blood is thicker than water. Harrison looked at the floor. Message received. Maeve turned on her heel and walked into the bedroom. She pulled a duffel bag from the closet and started throwing clothes, toiletries, and important documents into it. Harrison ran in after her. What are you doing? Leaving. Maeve zipped her toiletry bag. You made your choice, Harrison. By doing nothing, you chose her. I didn't choose anything. He grabbed her wrist. Maeve, don't do this. Calm down. Let go of me. She yanked her arm away. It's over. I am exhausted from being the third wheel in your relationship with your mother. You're not a third wheel. Harrison grabbed his hair, looking panicked. My God, Maeve, you're my wife. Then where were you this morning? Maeve screamed, the numbness finally shattering. When your mother barged in and tried to sabotage my livelihood, did you protect me? No. You stood in the doorway like a frightened toddler. You never know what to do when she's in the room. You will always choose her. She grabbed her duffel bag and shoved past him. Lorraine was standing in the living room, a smug, victorious look on her face. Walking out? Good. Lorraine sipped her wine. Harry needs a traditional wife, not a hysterical career woman. Maeve paused at the front door. Lorraine, you just successfully destroyed your son's marriage. I hope the victory tastes good. I saved him from a massive mistake. The older woman lifted her chin. Maeve opened the door and walked into the hall. Harrison chased after her, catching the door before it closed. Maeve, wait, please. Let's just go get a hotel tonight. Talk this through. Just us. Without Mom. You can't exist without your mom. Maeve pressed the elevator button. Harrison, it's done. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow morning. Over a condo? He grabbed her shoulders. You're throwing away 5 years over real estate? I'm throwing it away because when I needed a husband, I got a dependent. Maeve shoved his hands off her. The elevator dinged and opened. She stepped inside and hit the lobby button. As the steel doors slid shut, the last thing she saw was Lorraine walking up behind Harrison, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Maeve got into her car, locked the doors, and burst into tears. She cried the entire drive to Declan's place. When she arrived, her brother didn't ask questions. He just took her bag, handed her a glass of bourbon, and pointed to the guest room. You're safe here, Declan said. Stay as long as you need. The next morning, Maeve woke up to her phone ringing. It was an unknown local number. She cleared her throat and answered. Hello? Maeve Bennett? It was a deep, authoritative male voice. Yes, speaking. This is Detective Ramirez with the local precinct. We received a formal complaint this morning from a Lorraine Bennett. She alleges that you threatened her with physical violence yesterday during a domestic dispute at your residence. Maeve sat straight up in the guest bed. What? I never threatened her. She was trespassing. Regardless, a report was filed. I need you to come down to the precinct today to give a statement. Maeve rubbed her temples, a migraine blooming behind her eyes. Fine. I'll be there on my lunch break. She hung up and walked into the kitchen. Declan was making coffee. She told him about the call. Declan slammed his mug on the counter. That psychotic old bat. She's filing a false police report to leverage you. Don't worry. Vance recorded the whole incident at the condo on his phone before we kicked her out. The screaming, the slapping, all of it. Send it to me right now, Maeve demanded. At noon, Maeve sat in the sterile interview room at the police precinct. Detective Ramirez, a tired-looking guy in his 50s, listened to her explanation and then watched the video on her phone. He watched Lorraine try to rip the documents, scream, and physically strike Harrison. Ramirez sighed and handed the phone back. All right. Mrs. Bennett filed a report claiming you cornered her and threatened to beat her. Clearly, the video shows she was the primary aggressor. I'm rejecting her complaint for lack of evidence. Thank you, Maeve exhaled. But listen to me carefully. Ramirez leaned forward. Stay away from this woman. Family disputes turn ugly fast. If she keeps escalating, you need to document every text, every call, and file for an order of protection. I'll do that, Maeve promised. She left the precinct and drove straight to the county courthouse. She sat in the family court clerk's office, filled out the petition for dissolution of marriage, paid the filing fee, and requested the papers be served to Harrison at his office. The clerk stamped the paperwork. It was official. The clock was ticking on the mandatory waiting period. That evening, back at Declan's, she finally felt a sliver of peace. The divorce was filed. The tenants were moved in, but the peace was shattered at 9 a.m. the next morning when Greg, the property manager, called. Maeve, we have a massive problem. Greg sounded out of breath. Julian just called me. Last night around 2 a.m., someone tried to pick the lock on their door. The neighbor across the hall looked through her peephole and saw a middle-aged woman in a trench coat messing with the deadbolt. The neighbor yelled that she was calling the cops, and the woman ran off. Maeve's blood ran cold. Lorraine. She tried to break in. Julian and Harper are totally freaked out, Greg continued. They said if this happens again, they are breaking the lease and moving out. Tell them I am handling it today, Maeve said, her voice turning to steel. Tell them I am installing a Ring camera on the door and an ADT security system on the windows. Today, I'll let them know. Maeve called a security company, paid the exorbitant rush install fee, and by 3 p.m., she was standing outside the condo with the technicians. A camera was mounted facing the hallway, and sensors were placed on every point of entry. She synced the live feed to her phone. I am so sorry about this, Maeve told Julian, who was looking incredibly stressed. My mother-in-law is going through a severe mental health crisis. She will not be able to get within 10 feet of this door without the alarm tripping and the police being dispatched. Okay. Julian ran a hand through his hair. Okay. We'll stay. But this is crazy, Maeve. I know. It ends now. The weekend was agonizingly tense. Maeve sat at her brother's kitchen table, constantly checking the camera feed on her phone. Nothing. Just an empty hallway. Harrison texted her non-stop. Maeve, please come home. I was served the papers. We can't do this. I'll go to therapy. I'll set boundaries with Mom. Just please, don't throw this away. She didn't reply. Words were useless now. On Tuesday evening, the camera app pinged. Motion detected. Maeve dropped her fork and opened the app. It was 11:45 p.m. On the black and white infrared feed, Lorraine was standing in the hallway. But she wasn't alone. Harrison was with her. They were arguing in hushed whispers. Lorraine was pointing aggressively at the door. Harrison looked miserable, shaking his head. Then, Harrison reached into his jacket and pulled out a key ring. My old keys, Maeve realized with a jolt of horror. The ones I left on the counter. He stepped forward and slid the key into the deadbolt. He tried to turn it. Nothing happened. The locksmith had done his job. Harrison tried another key. Nothing. "Declan!" Maeve shouted. Her brother ran into the room. She shoved the phone in his face. "Call 911. Right now. Tell them a burglary is in progress at the property." Declan grabbed his phone and dialed. Maeve watched the screen in morbid fascination. Lorraine pushed Harrison out of the way, reached into her oversized purse, and pulled out what looked like a heavy-duty screwdriver and a tension wrench. "They are insane," Declan muttered, talking to the dispatcher. "Yeah. I need officers at." "Yep. Suspects are actively trying to breach the door." On the screen, Harrison grabbed his mother's arm, trying to pull her away. She violently shoved him off and jammed the screwdriver into the doorframe, trying to pry the molding away from the lock. Suddenly, the condo door was yanked open from the inside. Julian stood there, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, holding his phone up, recording them. "What the hell are you doing?" Julian shouted. "I'm calling the cops." Lorraine stumbled backward, dropping the screwdriver. "Young man, this is a misunderstanding. I am the rightful owner." "You're breaking and entering," Julian yelled. "Get away from my door." Harrison grabbed his mother by the shoulders. "Mom, let's go, move." "No!" Lorraine screamed, trying to push past him. "This is our property. That little thief stole it from us." Through the phone speaker, Maeve heard the heavy thud of boots on the stairs. 2 uniformed police officers appeared on the camera feed, flashlights drawn. "Police! Hands where I can see them! Drop the tools!" Lorraine froze. Harrison immediately put his hands in the air. "Officers," Lorraine immediately put on her refined country club voice. "Thank goodness. This man is squatting in my son's property." "Ma'am, we got a call from the property owner about an attempted break-in," the taller cop said, shining a light on the screwdriver on the floor. "Turn around and place your hands on the wall." "What?" Lorraine gasped. "Harry, tell them." "Mom, shut up." Harrison looked completely broken. "Just do what they say." Maeve threw her coat on. "Let's go. I need to be there." Declan drove like a maniac. They pulled up to the condo building just as the officers were leading Lorraine out the front doors in handcuffs. She was sobbing hysterically. Her perfect blowout ruined, mascara running down her face. Harrison walked behind them, looking like a dead man walking. He saw Maeve standing by Declan's truck. He stopped. "Maeve." His voice was a raspy whisper. "Please." "You tried to break into my tenant's home in the middle of the night," Maeve said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "You brought her here. She threatened to come alone." Harrison choked out, tears pooling in his eyes. "I tried to stop her. I swear to God, Maeve, I tried to get her to leave." "But you didn't." Maeve looked at him with profound pity. "You gave her the keys. You drove her here. You are 30 years old, Harrison, and you just caught a felony charge because you couldn't tell your mommy no." "Are you the property owner?" the arresting officer asked Maeve. "Yes. I have the deed and the lease agreements. We're taking her in for attempted burglary and vandalism. He's being detained as an accessory. We'll need you at the station to file the formal trespass and damages report." "I'll be right behind you," Maeve said. As they shoved Lorraine into the back of the cruiser, she locked eyes with Maeve through the plexiglass. The pure, unadulterated hatred in the older woman's eyes was chilling. But Maeve didn't look away. She just stared back, unblinking, until the cruiser drove away into the night. The aftermath was a whirlwind of legal bureaucracy. Lorraine was charged with attempted burglary and malicious destruction of property. Because she was a first-time offender with a high-priced lawyer, she avoided jail time. She pleaded out to a misdemeanor, got a year of probation, massive fines, and a strict restraining order forbidding her from coming within 500 feet of Maeve or the condo. Harrison wasn't formally charged. He flipped and testified that his mother coerced him, and Julian's video showed him trying to stop her, but the damage was permanent. 4 months later, the divorce was finalized by a judge in family court. Since the condo was protected, inherited property, and the marriage was relatively short without children, it was a clean split. They sold their suburban apartment, split the meager equity, and walked away. Standing on the courthouse steps on a bright Tuesday in May, holding her stamped divorce decree, Maeve felt an overwhelming sense of lightness. She was free. She pulled out her phone and texted Declan, "It's done. I'm officially single. Drinks on me tonight." her brother texted back instantly. A few days later, Greg called. Julian and Harper loved the condo so much, and Julian's tech company had just gone public. They wanted to know if Maeve would consider selling the unit to them. They offered $450,000 cash. Maeve drove to the condo one last time. She walked through the empty rooms, touching the walls her father had painted, looking out the window her mother used to stare out of while drinking her morning tea. "Mom, Dad," she whispered into the empty air. "Is it okay if I let it go?" She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a quiet, settling peace. Her parents hadn't worked their whole lives just to leave her a building. They had worked to leave her security, to leave her a future. She sold the condo to the young couple. With the cash, she paid off her student loans entirely and bought a sleek, modern 2-bedroom condo in a new development overlooking the river. It was a completely fresh start. A year later, Maeve was at an upscale outdoor mall, sipping an iced coffee, when she froze. Walking out of a boutique, carrying 3 shopping bags, was Harrison. Walking next to him, clinging to his arm, and looking up at him with doe-eyed adoration, was Sloane, Lorraine's goddaughter. Maeve ducked behind a planter, watching them. Harrison looked older, tired, his shoulders slumped. Sloane was chattering away, pointing at a jewelry store display. It hit Maeve like a ton of bricks. Lorraine had orchestrated the whole thing. She had successfully installed her compliant, dependent goddaughter as Harrison's new partner, a girl who would never question Lorraine's authority. Maeve didn't feel angry. She felt a profound, overwhelming wave of pity for him. She turned around and walked back to her car, a genuine smile breaking out on her face. That fall, a new corporate counsel was hired at Maeve's accounting firm. His name was Hayes. He was 35, tall, with sharp eyes and a calm, grounded demeanor. They literally collided in the break room, and Maeve spilled half her coffee on his dress shirt. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," she gasped, grabbing paper towels. "It's fine. It's just coffee." Hayes laughed, dabbing at the stain. "I needed to buy a new tie anyway. I'm Hayes, by the way." They started eating lunch together. Hayes was divorced too. He told her his ex-wife had been hopelessly enmeshed with her parents, allowing them to dictate their finances and holidays until the marriage collapsed. "How did you get over it?" Maeve asked him one afternoon. "Therapy?" "Mostly," Hayes smiled. "And realizing that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're fences to protect what's inside. If someone won't respect your fence, they don't belong in your yard." Maeve felt a spark ignite in her chest. They started dating slowly. There was no pressure, no mind games, no overbearing family members. Hayes's parents were retired teachers who lived in Florida and sent them oranges at Christmas. They were warm, distant, and completely respectful of their son's independence. 2 years after her divorce, on a snowy evening in December, Hayes proposed in the kitchen of her riverfront condo. He didn't make a huge spectacle. He just held her hand, looked her in the eyes, and asked her to be his partner. "Yes," Maeve whispered, tears of actual joy spilling down her cheeks. They got married in a small, elegant winter ceremony at a historic downtown library. Declan was the best man. Vance was an usher. Maeve wore a sleek silk gown and felt more beautiful and secure than she ever had in her life. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows at the reception, watching the snow fall over the city, Hayes wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured, kissing her shoulder. "Just thinking about how much can change." She leaned back against his chest. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. I was fighting a war I didn't start, trying to protect my parents' memory. Now, I have everything. You fought for it, Hayes said softly. You earned this peace, Maeve. I'm just lucky to be a part of it. Miles away, in the sprawling suburban McMansion, Harrison sat at his mother's massive dining table. Lorraine was standing in the kitchen, aggressively berating Sloane over a burnt casserole. Sloane, honestly, it's completely charred. Harry works a long day. He expects a decent meal. I don't know why I bother trying to teach you. Harrison stared blankly at his plate. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out under the table. It was an Instagram notification. A mutual college friend had posted a photo from Maeve's wedding. Harrison stared at the glowing screen. Maeve looked radiant, confident, happy. She was looking at a man who was holding her with quiet strength. A man who looked like he would burn the world down to keep her safe. Harrison locked his phone and shoved it back into his pocket, the bitter taste of regret coating his throat. He had lost the best thing that ever happened to him because he was too weak to stand up to his mother. And now, this was his life. Forever. "Harry!" Lorraine snapped from the kitchen. "Tell Sloane she needs to pay more attention to the oven timer." "Yes, Mom," Harrison muttered, staring at the burnt food. Back at the reception, the band started playing an upbeat jazz tune. Hayes spun Maeve onto the dance floor, dipping her as she threw her head back and laughed. The war was long over. She had walked through the fire, protected her legacy, and built a fortress around her own heart. And from here on out, the only person writing the script of her life was her.